We're at the Pluralsight 2013 Author Summit and learned a lot of cool stuff, hang out with a lot of cool people, and I ran into two developers that are using a framework that I personally think is very awesome called AngularJS, and we decided to sit down and talk a little about it. So before we do that, why don't you guys introduce yourself?
I'm Jim Cooper. I'm a Pluralsight author, and I also am a software developer for Pluralsight. And we started using AngularJS last year when we rewrote our player in HTML5.
My name is Joe Eames. I'm a front-end developer, and during the summer I contracted for Pluralsight, and I was there while we built the HTML5 player for Pluralsight.
Excellent. My name is Dan Wahlin, and I'm an author for Pluralsight as well, and happen to, as I mentioned, really like AngularJS. And these guys have both, with some others I guess, written an application that literally thousands of you are probably using as we speak, maybe, that plays the Pluralsight videos. And behind the scenes, it's a framework which a lot of people would consider a SPA framework, single page application called AngularJS. And so first off, why'd you guys come with all, I mean, there's not a shortage exactly of script frameworks. There's a few, as in hundreds or thousands. So why'd you guys choose Angular?
Well, one of the things that we did when we first started building the player was we just spiked it out and just kind of made a demo, wanted it to be kind of just a test to see what we could do, because we were using HTML5 video, a lot of stuff that we normally hadn't worked with before, and so we needed some investigation. So we just spiked it out, and when we were done with that, we realized that we needed to scrap it all and then write it for real. So we started writing it for real, and we didn't use any frameworks, really, jQuery, and that just quickly got to be unworkable.
Unmanageable.
So then it was time to look at some MVC frameworks. So we actually started by looking at Ember. And I had experience with Knockout and Backbone, and I didn't think that either of those was going to be really appropriate. So I wanted something that was more opinionated and more full-featured. Knockout's pretty minimal. Backbone doesn't have any opinions to it. I thought we could use something with more opinion to it. So we looked at Ember, but here we're a TDD shop. We test drive everything, and so that wasn't going to work because we were having real problems with Ember. We Googled, this is the summer of 2012, we Googled on how to test with Ember, and there was literally one result that had anything to do with testing in Ember, and it really actually had nothing to do with testing code you wrote in Ember. It was all about something else, and so there was nowhere we could go, and somebody else on the team brought up, hey, I heard Angular is very testable. Yeah, cool. So we went with Angular, and we never looked back. Within a few hours, we were using it. It was awesome.
Yeah, I heard, Jim, in 30 minutes you were done. Is that right?
Not quite. And give credit where credit's due. I was on vacation while all that was being determined, and Joe and Dave Adsit, another member of our team, were kind of the ones that ended up flushing out those tools and selecting Angular. But I've been glad ever since. I've loved working with it.
We'll edit out that part about a vacation, but that was good, So. Well, excellent. What are some of the, just for those that might not have used Angular, I myself am playing with it a whole bunch nowadays, really like it, but for those that maybe haven't used it, Jim, what are a few of the features you really like, that you think gave you a good springboard?
Well, I think just from a separation of concerns and, a solid code referring to solid principles, Bob Martin's, solid principles of object-oriented design. It really facilitates a lot of those principles: single responsibility, dependency injection, and testability. Really, that separation and that ability to inject services ended up saving us a few times during the project. So,
excellent. Are you using? Because one of the things that attracted me to it, because like you said, Knockout's awesome. I really like it. But it's more just for data binding, whereas Angular is kind of a full-featured, everything in the kitchen sink framework,
right.
Really, that's extensible. Did you end up having to use much of the data binding at all for the player, or is it more of just injecting in scripts?
Oh yeah, definitely. We're using data binding, and the more we learn, the more I realize we probably could have used even more data binding and more features of Angular. And that's one of the things that has impressed me is the more I learn about Angular, the more I realize how vast it is. There is so much out there to learn about Angular, and it really is a much more mature framework than I originally gave it credit for.
Yeah,
Yeah, all
What about
the controls were all bound. The navigation, all data binding. So there's really actually a lot. Surprisingly, just because the core of it is a video player, there's a surprisingly large amount of data binding.
Yeah, because you think, well, it's just video, guys. How hard could it be? Yeah. But I mean, at the top, you can jump ahead, and you have all that. I'm assuming you're binding,
right.
and a lot more to it, I suspect, than we realize.
Yeah.
It's easy to use, which means you did a good job, right? Because if it'd be hard, we'd be like, well, wrong framework, and you didn't write it right. But no. You mentioned the testability, because it sounds like you did a lot of research on that. What's the story there for Angular?
So what was really awesome about Angular compared to a lot of other tools is it was built, especially MVC frameworks, it was built right from the start with testability in mind. It was built by a team at Google. They had built something else, and one of the guys said, you know what, I think I could redo what we did in a short amount of time. And I think he estimated a couple of weeks, and it ended up taking him an extra week. But he came up with just the core of Angular, and what they saw really worked well, but they wanted it to be testable. So right from the beginning, they made it testable, and then they expanded it from there. And they were always testing. In fact, the tool Testacular came out of the work that they were doing on Angular because they wanted it to be so testable. And they didn't just support unit tests, they also support this concept called end-to-end tests, which is really cool. So it's super testable. They put the dependency injection in, so it's easy to mock things, just all the kind of stuff that you're just not going to find anywhere else in JavaScript. Being a front-end JavaScript developer who's a big tester, trust me, that's a pain point constantly that nobody thinks about this, and then I'm trying to test with that sort of code. Angular is the place that actually thought about it. So when I tell people what's awesome about Angular, I'm always saying testability, but there's so many other things that everybody, even their first thing they tout is, oh, it's HTML done right. That's kind of their tagline. But I'm always like, oh, it's testable.
Did you guys end up doing any custom filters or directives or anything like that in it?
Yeah, we have a few directives. Mostly we've used directives for adding events that Angular doesn't natively support.
Native, yeah.
But that's one thing I'm learning about directives. You could do way more with them than what we've done with them. And but I think one of the most powerful points of Angular that I've seen is the dependency injection, the ability to create services that are well encapsulated and have single responsibilities, and then you just inject those in wherever you need them. And that actually saved us a lot of work when we started rolling out our HTML5 player and realized that the video element still is got a lot of growth. It's not as mature as it needs to be. And so some of our customers were having troubles using the HTML5 video playback. And we wanted to be able to use the same video, the same HTML5 framework that we had built, but be able to swap out what the behind-the-scenes element is that's playing the video, whether it's HTML5 or Silverlight or Windows Media Player. And because we had already encapsulated the interaction with the HTML5 element into a service, we were able to easily clone that service into 3 other services that are, for Silverlight and Windows Media Player. And then as they select which element they want, we just swap out that service, and that would have been a lot more work without this.
So basically you have a kind of similar interface across all 3 scripts, inject them in, call whatever function it is, and boom, you're ready to go.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. Especially when, like you guys said, you got to support. It's not like I'm just writing a Silverlight player and HTML5. I'm actually doing a bunch. And who knows in the future, who knows?
Right.
HTML7 will have, the unicorn player or something. So who knows?
Yeah, but I really like what they're doing with that unicorn player. It looks cool.
Is it pretty good? Yeah, I heard it. The working group's working very hard on that. Approval's what, 2050, I think I heard?
Something like that. Yeah, that TC39 group thing.
So, well, to wrap up, I personally have found it useful. I wanted to, and I appreciate your guys' time in explaining how you've used it. Any other things you want to bring up about Angular that we've mentioned testability, we've talked about directives a little bit, we've talked about dependency injection, I guess. Anything else to wrap up? Last thoughts?
I think one of the things that's worth mentioning is that Angular is a lot different than the other frameworks because it doesn't use a templating language. Instead, it just uses directives in the HTML.
Yes.
And so you basically can put in you can create your own custom HTML tags. You put them in there, and they specify the behavior that you want. And then Angular goes in and replaces them with the real HTML that you actually want, and it encapsulates that in a piece. And in the future, It's a thing called the Shadow DOM that's coming out for the future of the web. And HTML is going to support this, and there's a lot of browser vendors who are already picking this up, but it'll let you, they're going to be able to replace those pieces with really encapsulated actual real components. So Angular is really looking towards the future of the web, and another huge advantage of that is it separates out your view concerns from your actual business logic.
Awesome.
So you can just throw the view up there, and your business logic could be somewhere else, and it makes it so much easier to maintain and test. Just
Nice.
tons.
Jim, any last thoughts?
Yeah, a couple of things. Angular is designed around model view controller, and that's where you get the separation that Joe was just talking about. And also there's a lot that Angular comes packaged with.
There is.
You know, there's a lot of services. You know, there's a raw HTTP service for doing, you know, JSON requests or AJAX requests.
One and the same, pretty much.
Right, yeah. So there's this raw HTTP service for doing AJAX requests, but then they also have a resource service, which is more of a RESTful type service. That's they're really easy to consume and set up, and testable, so you can test without actually hitting your HTTP services. And
nice.
And
Which
so
is a
it
big
comes
deal
with a
with
lot
testing.
of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
I also think it's worth mentioning that if you're a Microsoft developer and you're getting more and more into the web, that Angular feels a lot more like having that rich environment around, that framework around,
I agree.
than a lot of the other options out there. And it pairs really well with TypeScript, really well.
Yeah, you can use we won't go into it, but there's a definitely type site out there where you can get TypeScript definition files, and Angular's one of those, like you said. And if you're going that route for keeping your JavaScript clean, that's nice. So, well, thanks, guys. So to wrap up, yeah, Angular, if you're new to it, as was just mentioned, it does a whole bunch of things, more than we have time to cover. I think my favorite feature, though, is instead of having a project with just a ton of script references and having to worry in the future about how the versions change and things, Angular provides kind of a mini-me framework, if you will, on the client side that will let you much easier do things much easier, such as the data binding, the injection, and all that, and it comes out of the box. So it's definitely worthwhile to look into, I think. And again, I appreciate Joe and Jim's time, and we'll look forward to wrapping up the rest of the conference here.
Yeah, it's been great.
So thanks a lot.
Thanks.